what we did was we've kind of talked a little bit about wanting to, start doing some ideas of, what's allowed us to be so successful. I say us, basically Tim and I, on the U20. So we went out with a couple other boats that wanted to do a practice one day. And so we went out to help them and just decided, let's just go ahead and jump on the boat and see if we can't recreate some of the stuff that we do when we're sailing together ourselves. And so Tim's going to help me out a lot. I know, the video is going to be, it's only done with my shitty little iPhone. So we're going to make the best of it. But Tim definitely has some points that I didn't capture when I put these videos together while I was in Daytona in February. And they're a little bit crude, but wanted to just keep it simple, right? Not give you guys everything to think about and work on all at once, but just break it down into sections. So it just turned out to be basically just kind of spinnaker handling. Hopefully it won't take an entire hour to do this. But hopefully you guys will be able to see what we're doing, actually see us do it. And, maybe if you want to implement it into what you and your crews do, then, hopefully it'll work for you. So Tim, you want to kind of give them a little heads up on anything or?
Nope. I mean, I'll chime in as we go through the different videos, but
okay.
I think that was a good overview of what we're trying to cover.
I mean, people have always asked us, why do we keep sailing together? Why don't you guys split up? We've sailed against each other plenty, but we definitely enjoy each other's company. And as often as we argue, actually on the boat, we do it in a meaningful way. And, we may not see eye to eye, but we can understand what the other one is trying to get across. And so, we hopped on Bill Toole's boat here, and I think it's David Lawrence. Is that who was with us, Tim? Dave Lawrence?
Yep.
So he was the third member of Bill's crew that day. They had already been out sailing and practicing, and we were kind of helping them. And so he stayed on the boat, and Tim and I jumped on. Bill and Paul DeMarco jumped off, and so we shot these videos. So here's a port to starboard jibe, just kind of starting off with just one of these clips that I made. What we're going to do is the first part of it is real time, and then there will be a little interstitial, and it'll go down and be a slow-mo of basically the same shot. So we can digest it afterwards, after we see it. So Travis, if you want to go ahead and play it, just go ahead.
I killed the audio on it, right? Is that okay? Or do you want me to play the audio?
Leave it on, see what happens.
Okay. I'm kind of a little slightly unprepared to see let me take my headphone off. Maybe that'll help with this.
Right.
I mean, we can do the voiceover too.
Sure.
Here's a look at
the audio doesn't do it. Oh, there it is.
Nice from across means it's go down on the boom. Nice.
The key is to get the sail from one side to the other as quickly as possible.
Better. I like that one.
It's important to note here, to not allow the clue to get too far forward. We only want it forward enough to get around the headstay, feed it in quickly, which keeps the leech from lifting and wrapping itself around the luff of the sail. In which case then, the sail will have to go inside out in order for it to refill on the new jibe, slowing it down.
Okay, so I don't know if you guys can hear that very clearly. It's a little bit soft and muted, but what I'm getting at, and there's going to be some slides here later also. Travis has already got his cursor down there. But it's basically, it's the relation of the kite to the boat. Here, actually, this was last weekend, like Emily was talking about, a beautiful day out there. They were out sailing a number of boats. And you can see here, this is actually BJ and Emily with the blue and light blue in the middle of a jibe. And there's a couple things to notice here. And that's the direction in which the boat is pointed and where the spinnaker is in relation to it. And so you can tell that the boat's still actually headed downwind. It hasn't officially jibed yet, and the spinnaker's already to the headstay. It's just about to come over to the new side. And so what that's doing is that's keeping that upper leech from basically going so far out and forward of the boat that it's going to wrap itself on the luff. And so what we'll do is, if you want to go to the pink one, actually, Travis, we'll show you what happens if you don't do this. So right here, notice the pink kite. So same thing. If you notice, the clue has just gotten to the head stay, but the boat is already pointed in the direction in which it's going to be sailing. So the boat's turned quickly and the kite was eased too far. And if you see that furthest edge of the spinnaker, the pink spinnaker, is the leech. And it's already wrapped itself on the luff or around the backside of the luff. And so that's what's causing a lot of jibes to take way too long. Okay. And, you know, the benefactor or the side note of that is going to be that the boat's already sailing where it wants to be, but the kite is not full, right? And the main's still, you know, actually still inverted. You know, it's not what you want. Okay. So going back to the video, Travis, just play it again once real quick. Now that you've seen it once. So you can see here as we're getting ready, the third crew, right? Look at that weight transfer as he goes across the boat. That turned the boat for me. I hardly had to do anything, right? Whoops. Oh, sorry, that's your screen. That's what's turning the boat, right? If you notice, and we're going to go over this in some of the other videos here in a second. But the clue didn't get very far at all. And you can see Tim's getting big pulls in. And Tim, tell him what you do with your footwork here.
Yeah, so depending on the breeze, you're either going to stand like all the way up on the seat, or in this one, all I'm doing is really just putting either my right or left leg up on the seat. And I'm just using that to push, you know, just to distribute my weight over there to try to get more of a lean. And then when we flatten out, that's when you do like a full squash. You're sitting down on the seat trying to squash the boat down, just like a roll tack.
So right there, he put his left foot over on the thing while he was also, you know, leaning down because the boom is going to come across. That one, the boom came across a little bit too early for me. Normally, I like the late boom jibes, but this one, it's pretty light breeze, right? So there's only so much you can do to keep the boom over there long enough. However, it worked out. You know, we came out, the kite filled pretty quickly. The boat is just now getting onto its course, filling, and then, you know, between Tim's weight and my weight, if we can sync that up, it's going to be even better. But sometimes I think one of the other videos, you'll see I actually stay to the leeward side even longer. And then Tim does all of the press or the squash on the new jibe all by himself.
And we really like to, like Steve was saying, get the spinnaker over before the main. Like you're almost trimmed in pretty far before the main flops over in an ideal situation.
What do you get, Custom? Okay, you're just looking out there.
Yeah, so I'm sitting here with Bruce Cooper right now, and he's reminding me, you know, our sheets and the way I've made them over the past few years, in order to not let the clue get too far in front of the headstay, you need a fairly short pigtail. You only want your spinnaker sheets to get around the jib cleanly. You know, the days of having a long pigtail thinking that the clue would get further is not what we actually want. We actually want the shortest amount of pigtail with just the simple ease of the spinnaker sheet getting over the front of the jib cleanly. And that kind of helps with not letting that, you know, leech lift so much. Because you got to think about it, right? The contact points on the boat are lower than the clue. So anything you can do to keep the clues low, or the clue low, is going to be better off. You know, the Meldris 24, when we sail with 5 people, my job was always, as we jibed, I was overhauling. And then as soon as it got to me, I would just pull straight down on the new spinnaker sheet. And what that did is that allowed the leech to go tight and not wrap itself around the luff. And it makes a huge, huge difference in the amount of time that the kite is not full and pulling. So,
Steve, do you do anything to carry the main across, grab the main sheet and bring the boom across, or are you just letting it fly across like it looks like in this video?
I'm trying to let it be as late as possible, but sometimes I will. If we don't get enough roll in, then yeah, I'm gonna have to pull it across.
Okay.
But obviously you can see the benefits of the big roll, right? I mean, you can
Mm-hmm.
boat's accelerating, pretty rapidly. And we, ultimately, whether it's tacking or jibing, we want to minimize the time that the sail is flogging or limp or, not doing what it's designed to do, right? We want to go, the sail wants to be from one tack to the other, whether it be a tack or a jibe. You want it to be full. You want to minimize the amount of time that it goes neutral, right? So in order for it to be out there as long as possible, it's going to help steer the wind a little bit into the kite during the jibe. I'm sure on big boats, probably more so, but it definitely has a benefit. So,
Pardon me. This is Peter O'Connor.
Yep.
How long do you want your spinnaker bridle you were talking about for the clue?
so
5 inches?
you want
10
it no more than a foot and a half,
Okay.
away. Yeah. Like I said, it's as close as possible, but still be able to tie a knot comfortably. It definitely does not need to be 3 feet. There's no reason whatsoever to have the pigtail be 3 feet.
Okay, got it.
Because you could be pulling, that spinnaker sheet and it could be tight against the headstay. But if you have a 3-foot pigtail, the clue is getting way too far and it's still going out forward of the boat, even though you may be pulling back.
Yes.
So you almost have to pull, 3 feet more in that instance. So just something to
Oh.
keep in mind. You want to go to another video? It's going to be a lot of the same things. So let's just go ahead.
Before we go there, what are your thoughts on focusing on jibing the ASIM first, then the main?
Absolutely.
In terms
So
of,
sorry,
I mean,
before we go
typically
there,
that's the strategy, right?
so just one other thing to answer Emily's question is in the lighter air, you do need to grab the main sheet when it's going over, and we'll
Sure.
typically grab it like as it's coming over to pop those battens. That's another thing is we stop it almost in the middle of the boat and pop the battens when it's really light.
Yeah, and I think I noted on that one, I said it pull down on the boom. So what I'll do is, I have, as you guys know, I have my own bridle system for that main sheet, right? And it creates a nice little, V shape as it goes to the boom, which creates a perfect little handle. And you'll see basically right there, I reach up and I grab that bridle, that V, and I'll just kind of hold the boom. And that's what pops the battens for me. It's a lot to do. And it's, I don't do it every time. I'm not that good, certainly, but that's the idea for me going forward. That's what I'm trying to do, is get those battens to pop and get that main to be working as soon as possible.
In heavier air, would you still carry your third person in front of the mast?
It depends. I mean, once you're smoking, no, for sure, you're all back in the cockpit.
Okay.
Yeah, anything in medium breeze, that third person, as much as you don't want to have them in light air, can be a huge benefit in boat handling. And we'll go through it when we do like an upwind one with tacks. Obviously here with the jibes, you can see, what an influence it makes just having that, that extra 150 to 200 pounds, moving his weight that far forward. It makes a big difference. So this is interesting. This jibe, I don't know if you remember, Tim, but we had a conversation after this one about, where to kind of pre-sheet the new sheet in terms of, pulling it in too far or just leaving it at a certain spot and waiting for the kite to fill. And I think, we kind of see right there, it was kind of an ease. And so the luff took a little bit longer to fill. And I think after this, I talked him into just keeping it slightly over trimmed out of the jibe, just to guarantee that the kite would fill sooner, and then suffer with having to ease the sheet to your optimal trim after that. You agree, Tim?
Yeah, I didn't realize we actually got a video of it though.
Yeah,
I was
we
like, why are we
took-
playing this one? This was not one of our better
We
jibes.
took the audio out for.
And in light air, it's okay to keep that third guy forward of the mast the entire time.
100%. Yeah.
Even into moderate air, we keep the third guy forward of the mast. It's really only when you need your weight aft and the skipper's going to the back of the boat and the crew is going sliding back to the back of the boat. Like that's the only time.
So like
Yeah.
7 knots of boat speed or more, you think?
It's going to be hit and miss. Ultimately, the it's much more being forward than being back. The last thing you want is for everybody to be back, for sure. Where we learned this, Tim, was if you remember, I think Chris Chambers, right? In 2017, we were watching him go downwind, and he had his third crew always forward of the mast, and we're like, man, that seems a bit radical. But I think over time we learned that in this kind of circumstance, it makes a pretty good benefit to keep the transom out of the water.
I had a race with Paul DeMarco. He sat up there and he actually mentioned that he liked it because it was not that uncomfortable.
It's a lot more comfortable for sure.
So it's a easy sell if your third is reluctant to go that far forward. Say, just try it out.
Yep. Okay.
Quick question. This is Trees.
Yep.
You do that even in the chop or no?
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
In
the
the
more
chop,
the boat
okay.
is heeled over in the chop, the better off you're going to be, right? Because now you're placing the boat on edge instead of pounding. And this
there
is
you
a video kind of referencing that a little bit.
Yeah, right.
Quality is so shitty, but yeah. The big thing is to, like I say in the video, I stepped over to kind of put that, it's not a chine, obviously, but to kind of roll the boat into the waves and cause it to want to turn up on its own. But it also loads the keel and rudder, it loads the rig, and it loads the sails, and it just allows you to then, kind of punch through, if you will, in order to get back up to speed as soon as possible.
Thanks.
And granted, that was a tiny little wave, right? But
Yeah.
you can see the amount of influence it has over the boat, especially in that light of air. I mean, this powerboat wake came from, half a mile away. But it was just enough to upset everything. You can watch the leech flapping on the main. That means it's not doing anything, right? So heel the boat over, load it up, and then obviously you get the acceleration on the flatten. And you can see there, we actually sped up so fast that the luff of the spinnaker folded over because it put the apparent wind so far forward all of a sudden. But anytime that stuff's jumping around like that, it's not pulling. You can imagine, see all that, just, yeah. And, we could also, Dave Lawrence, the third person, can help through that also. Obviously, having all three people doing the same thing is going to be a big difference maker. Oftentimes if he just slides to leeward a little bit, that'll be enough that, maybe I don't have to, or, you can trim the sails in a little bit more, just so that way they don't bounce so much. I kind of made up for it by taking that step there. And it worked out. Like I said, this was very, very impromptu.
In light air to moderate air, is the skipper typically crossing last?
I would say yes. I'm almost always the last one. And if you go to the next video, I think Travis will see one of these where I'm actually sitting on the low side all the way out of the jibe, I think.
So we've sailed together enough where that's not always the case. I'm the fat one of the two of us. And so I'm usually doing the squashing a little more than Steve is. So like when he's crewing, I might actually be the first one, just depending on those conditions. But
it's
but
definitely
I would say typically
than the trimmer.
speaking, you want the skipper being the last one.
Yeah. Because, like we documented in this, after doing it, going back and looking, the influence of that third person, they're ultimately turning the boat. And anytime we take a third person with us, I tell them, regardless of who you are, I said, you are turning the boat. If I talk about trying to do a jibe, you move. And as soon as you move, I'm along for the ride. I'm just holding the stick. they are ultimately turning the boat and making the biggest influence on that jibe. And to that point, you can see there how long I sat on that leeward tank and let Tim, he has to be the cleanest of the crew, for sure, because he got to get the kite over. So oftentimes the boom will hit him in the back right there. Sometimes I'll try to keep it from happening, depending on where he's located. When I pull down, I'm going to either pull it down before him or after him. I don't do it all the time, obviously, but it's I try to kind of judge it as to where he is in the boat, because I don't want him to get clobbered.
Will you ease off on your vang prior to jibing?
No. We
No.
usually set our vang downwind for just what kind of twist we want, and then leave it alone unless we broach like we did at midwinters.
Yeah, once, obviously before the race, put the spinnaker up, make sure everything's led right, all that stuff. We'll set the boom bang and almost never touch it the rest of the day.
Okay.
Now, one other thing I would say is making sure you use the exact same terminology every single time. I know it seems obvious, but I've like crew for enough other folks in the fleet that they might say something different every jibe. And they're not always, hey, ready to jibing. Like when you have clear communication like that, it makes it easier for your third to know like when they need to cross. Right? Like when you say you're jibing, that doesn't mean Steve or me is turning the boat. That means your third person is heeling the boat.
Yeah, it's definitely key to have, the more you sail with the same people, the better off. We all know that, right? The better people you have, it's all going to add up. But the biggest thing is all having the same mindset of, what you're doing, just awareness, the situational awareness. I say that all the time. Just you always have to know where you are and what you're going to do and how hard to do it. Not everything is, a million miles an hour and +2. Some things have to be just, taken in stride, and just let things happen and then sort it out. So here's a spinnaker set. Let's see what, so the key thing to notice there is that Tim is feeding it out, and he fed the tack out just to the shroud. We're not fans of going past that. I actually don't even pull it out hardly out of the cockpit when I'm crewing. I know Tim doesn't like it, but it works. The way Tim does it to get it around there is great also. But the key is to not get the halyard trapped or the luff of the spinnaker trapped behind the spreader, right? So
Now,
anything
are you launching in front of the spreader or behind it?
No, always behind. It's
Always
too difficult. Yeah. The first set of the day I used to try to do out in front and it would be okay, but it's too hard to douse that way all day and keep it clean. You just have to go behind on these boats because the cockpit's located so far aft.
And one of the things I've seen some people do is they ease the main so far that it's actually pinning the halyard and the spinnaker. So, you just got to make sure you can see right there how Steve did not ease the main out yet. And then once the spinnaker's up, he does another ease to get the main set to the right angle.
And it happens all the time. I'll get around the weather mark and I'll see it that it's trapped and I'll have already eased the main out too far because it doesn't take much, right? Let's be honest, for that to hit the spreaders because they're swept back so much. And I'll do my best to try to gather some main sheet and, get it in to try to eliminate how hard, especially when it's, windier, obviously, how hard that main is pinned against the spreader. Because if it does have the halyard there, it's not going to make it easy for the guy putting the spinnaker halyard up for sure.
Especially if there's an offset and it's really blowing because you tend to ease more when you're at a beam reach.
Yep.
And then you just got to remember to, as you head down, yank it in a little bit right as they're launching. I think
Absolutely.
that's probably one of the most important things as a skipper. Is make sure the boat's pointed the right angle and keep that pull it in right as they're launching.
Yeah, that can make or break a a good mark rounding for sure.
Is
And
there,
it's not always going to go right, trust me.
is there
you don't
ever a
want-
reason why you would not have the pole out as much as y'all have it, but say pre-feed up to the shrouds, and then as you go around, let the pole pull the tack forward?
Mhm.
That makes
So a lot of
sense?
boats like J70s, Melders 24s, we all do that, right? You preset the tack, you have a mark on it, and then as you pull the pole out, it pulls the tack out for you.
Yeah.
That's
That's
not
a-
the case on this boat though, however.
but that's a class rule though, right?
Nope, nope, nope.
The pole, you can't
It's
have the
just
pole out before the mark or something like that.
You can have the
it just needs to be one continuous motion. The reason you do it in this boat though is or the reason you can do it in the other ones is because you're not launching behind the shrouds.
correct.
And it's a lot easier to get that sail, the tack up there. In this boat, since you launch behind the shrouds, it just doesn't work. I mean, we've experimented with it a little bit, but it's pretty obvious that it's not as effective as just a tiny pre-feed, hoist, and then finish the tack when the sail's most of the way up.
Yep.
I meant as a class rule of the 70s, right? Of when you could put the pole out
No, it's all of us
in fleet racing.
till you cross the plane of the weather mark. And
So
it
you're
has
not supposed to have
to be active
you're not
setting.
supposed to have that pull out before that, even with a U20.
Correct.
Well, the
Oh.
rule in the U20 is it's a continuous motion to the rounding. So if you pull your pull out 5 boat lengths prior to the mark, Mike Jocelyn will visit you on the dock after the race. So that works.
That's because it's the pole isn't in the normal position for going upwind at that point.
Yeah.
Correct. Correct.
But so you guys are saying the J70s and the Meldus 24s get away with that because their cockpit is a bit more forward, so the shroud, the slot, and they can do that forward launch easier. Basically, that's what you're saying. Interesting.
Going between the leech of the jib and the shroud, which on those boats is
It's
plenty
forward. Yeah.
Right. And where it's doing it from is literally, a foot and a half behind the mast. So it's all right there.
And
It's
I
built
would say,
on the
like
boat.
for most people, when you're hoisting the spinnaker, you should be focusing on the things that make it go smooth. If you're, like you do want to optimize at some point, but what you really don't want to do is put that sail in the water, right?
Mm.
Like you don't want it in the water. You don't want to be shrimping, like those are more important than having some perfect hoist where it's one boat length after the mark, it's up and pulling. In a perfect world, you do that, but you do want to minimize a little bit of risk there.
Completely agree. You can, yeah, that's
And-
100% the best way to do it.
So the way to keep that from getting trapped is the skipper has to keep the main sheet further back. Okay.
That will help. It won't keep it from happening. It will help it from not happening. Yeah.
That happens such a
once or
fair
twice.
bit that when we put it up, we seem to get snarled. And we've been taking the pre-feed and the tack as much forward as we can and then launching
In waves?
on a lake. Just
Yeah.
at all.
Yeah, you go do it in the ocean and it'll be full of water before you know
Okay, gotcha.
it. Or just healing over, right? I mean, your chances are you'll pull it off 10% of the time.
I'm just noticing just how smoothly that chute's going up and it's not getting caught on anything.
Right. Yeah.
Hey, oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, is that okay?
I had a question for you guys that are running the carbon mast, and it's related but unrelated. Donna on her carbon mast, no block at the top because the carbon C-Tech has that ring at the top, so she just has a ball, and it goes up, and the ball stops it from going too far. And I got thinking about that, and I'm like, that might be better, honestly, because that block at the top, when the halyard is loose, it's kind of flopping around and maybe binding on the halyard as it's going up. I wonder if that's common. Do a lot of people with the carbon mast have a block up there, or are they just running a ball?
I think the C-Techs are all going to be blocks,
Yeah.
right? I know after loading this mast up here
Yeah.
today, it just has a pad eye, and so you have to fasten a block to it. There's
Okay.
no through hole or through deck fitting in the mast there. It goes up to the mast head, right? Same
Yeah.
as the Forte. So yeah, it's the same as when the aluminum ones had the external block.
Yeah.
You know, people, kind of didn't like them, so they went to the
The
Burt.
little lip thing. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. So the C-Techs are going to be the same way. The only difference is that it doesn't go through the mast immediately after the block. It does have a, it only turns not quite 90 degrees to go back up the rest of the way instead of turning 180 immediately for that. So I'm hoping that that shouldn't be the problem. I don't know that any of the carbon rigs that I've seen have had problems with that spinnaker halyard.
One of the
My halyard exits the mast about 4 feet above that ring. It's almost a mast
down to
head
the ring.
exit.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things that whoever mentioned the smoothness, Chris Chambers and Steve mentioned Chris Chambers, and Chris used to always talk about that you need that line. He had this great big linebacker of a crew guy, Brian Tyrell, and if Brian felt any friction in that halyard, he was all over it. And it was Chris who convinced me to switch to a 1/4 inch hard running halyard, almost too hard because it eats through things, but making sure that's there and making sure the block at the top is smooth. And you kind of have to go through that whole system and make sure all of that there's no friction in it, because that will prevent the crew from efficiently setting and dousing the chute if there's bind in that system.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's definitely something that has to go on the list of, things that, just like the further blocks up in the deck, forward, those are inherently go bad, but they're under a lot of load. All things you got to check at least every year.
Now, do y'all have stanchions on that boat?
Just the aft. There's just the aft pulpit, and then the one short stanchion, at the back of the doghouse.
Hey,
Okay,
Steve,
'cause,
it looks like, is Tim trimming the chute and getting rid of the jib, furling the jib?
I usually do that. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so you do both? Okay. It just looked like he was busy.
It's because we prefer to have the person hoisting up forward. So we
Okay,
don't have an extra set of hands coming back there. There are often times, depending on the breeze, where I just hand the sheet back to Steve if he's driving, or if I'm driving, he hands the sheet back to me, and then you just do the jib real quick.
Okay.
Yeah, something we started at North Americans last year was putting a block at the base of the mast, or sorry, the block that is at the base of the mast, the spinnaker halyard. It now has a cleat with it, so the third person can go ahead and just hoist, only pulling from the base of the mast, and then later on we tail it back. Top cleat.
a question for you on stanchions.
Mhm.
On the boat I sail on, it's got a stanchion for amongst all these. That seems to be way further forward. Does the class, if you were just to go with your back stanchion, is that class legal? Could you remove the other stanchions? Because it does seem to get away in the
You
way
have
of
the bar that goes from the middle to a little bit forward, basically, right? Is that what you have?
I'm trying to be honest, I'm trying to remember, but it
Behind the sofa.
Whoops. Charlie, can you mute, please? Yeah, so there was a couple of options. They messed with the height of the stanchions, and then some of the boats, like Phil Kainsberg has this, number 9 has this. There's a set of stanchions in the front that go from the middle and then almost up to the shrouds, and it's a solid bar. You can take that back to just the rear one, but you need to be kind of thoughtful about how you do that. Maybe talk to somebody, and that's still class legal to go back.
Would you just take the front one and reinstall it and get rid of the middle?
If you have it.
Yeah.
So I'm not so sure the various configurations on the stanchion though really fundamentally change the crew work when you're flying the spinnaker, though.
Well, it's not flying, it's the launch and the takedown. On our boat, the skipper, it really, he liked when it's not often that we fly it, but he likes to launch in that triangle in front of the shrouds and take in there as well.
What,
And
Phil and Denise on here?
Yeah, I was just looking to see if they are, because they don't have any trouble with this, and they have that bar. Phil's on here, and then I don't know if Steve or JB are on here. Their boat has it as well, and they don't have any trouble with it either. Let us get back to you on that one, because I think there's a way to. It'd be interesting to hear what those guys do, because they both have the same config that you do and seem to be running just fine. And I know Phil and Denise both like the extra stanchion, like they don't have any problems with it.
we just it seems to jam up
Uh-huh.
in there.
See that happening for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, there's, like we said earlier, though, there's on this boat, you really shouldn't be launching in that triangle. It's really not effective to do it.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so you want to just go to the pictures then, Travis?
Yeah,
and we'll just kind of
sure. Yep.
briefly go through them real quick.
Yeah.
Is it really that blurry? Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, it's a little grainy, but you get the idea.
Sorry, guys. Yeah, so this is going back to that initial beginning. This is just BJ and Emily, right? It was pretty windy. Was it Saturday, I believe? Yeah. And so just the two of them. But they're showing, that, they've done it a time or two, obviously. And this is kind of the way you want it to look. You want the boat to still be aimed downwind, all right? Not on the new jibe yet. And the boat's turning at a decent rate. The main right here is kind of I'd call it a late jibe, considering it was in far enough. But the clue is just now at the head stay. And then, Emily's gonna, tail it off, and then it's gonna be, full in the next, I think there's another frame, right? Not too far later, Travis.
Yes, sir.
So that's the same one, just blown up. So there you go. So immediately after this, and this was a video that Dave Rink took, following the boats around. And so you can see BJ and Emily here, the blue kite. They're on the new jibe. They're on the course they want to go. And the kite's, going to fill, and they're going to pull away. Meanwhile, the pink kite next to him, you want to slide over, Travis? So John Lee and his crew here, they've jibed, not simultaneously, but just briefly, like a matter of seconds afterwards. And John's turned the boat pretty fast here, you can tell, because the kite's gotten pretty far out. The clue got a little bit too far, and the rate of the turn is what caused the spinnaker to now be affected by the new windward side. And so it literally just pushed the leech right over on top of the luff. And so as they exit this jibe, it takes a long time for that spinnaker to then, unwrap itself, back to where it needs to be, and then off and sailing.
So should I be turning at just start learning the time of it, or should I be watching the spinnaker as I turn and say, okay, when the tack is at the forestay, then I can complete the turn? Like, what do you go based off of just the timing of yourself or timing of watching the sail?
It's the timing, yes. And if you're timing it on watching the sails, you're probably not going to be doing something else right. So, walk before you can run. Just understand that you'll kind of get a feeling, and your crew will get a feeling also, because a lot of it, obviously, is, it's caused by the rate of pull. And so if somebody misses one handful along the way, or they step on it, it's going to throw it all off. Does that mean you stop what you're doing in turning the boat? No, you still have to continue the jibe for sure. So, it's just a matter of doing it, right? I mean, it happens to all of us. This was just an example, just to show what happens. I think go to the one after this, BJ, maybe. Is there?
I think this shows where you've jibed the boat before you've jibed the chute, right? Basically,
a little
bit. The boat's jibed, right?
Well,
you've jibed. It's late on the chute or early on the jibe, either way, right?
The key is to get the kite coming across as soon as possible, right? That it's indicative that you know, once you get it there, it's going to fill sooner. So you have to get it over to the new side as soon as you can.
I think
I've
I had
had
the,
I've had some people argue with me about this, and I'll let you maybe be the tiebreaker. You know, my theory and my instruction is typically there's no way for you to pull the new sheet too fast.
There's
And
no
some people say, oh, I like to kind of delay or pull it slowly or something, the new sheet. And I'm like, no, why don't you pull it as fast as you possibly can for the new sheet, for
what
the
you
new
don't
active
want,
sheet.
and I've learned this over time, is, and because initially I thought I'll just keep easing the kite, right? I want the kite to be as far from the boat as I turn down away from the wind. Well, over the years we figured out with the ASIMs, that's not the right way to do it, right? So
You
you
can
only
just pull it as fast as you freaking can.
as far as you only want to ease it as far as it needs to go in order to clear the jib. And if you have to in light air, you're going to end up pulling it around because the clew's not wanting to fly out by itself anyways. But in medium to heavy air, you definitely don't want that clue to get really far. You just want to be pulling the new one. I tell people, you know, as soon as the jibe starts, just drop the sheet, right? Where, regardless of where it is, and just start pulling the new one, because you're going to end up having to catch up to the rest of us no matter what. You know, just put that one down and only focus on the new sheet.
And should they start pulling before you start turning, or you start turning before they start pulling?
Simultaneous, you know, like I said, I'm not turning, right? It's up to that third person. You know, what we figured out is that third person is really turning the boat. There's a couple more videos. I didn't get the chance to put them together, but you know, where Bill Toole, I was kind of helping him and, you know, showing him that a couple of the jibes, the rudder hardly moves at all. It's literally just the weight transfer on the boat, turning it and, you know, causing the boat to do what it wants, like a surfboard, right? A surfboard is, you know, shaped a way that when you push on it with your foot, your heel or your toes, whichever way you push, that board, that shape of that board is going to curve that way, right? The opposite of a ski. A ski is, you know, the opposite way, right? You lean on an inside edge and you're going to turn that way. Well, the surfboard, you're doing it the opposite way because it's shaped the opposite way. The boat's the same way. You put that edge in the water and that's what's turning the boat.
I think there was a question in the chat about continuous sheets, just a preference thing. People like continuous, don't like continuous. I don't like it, so I don't have them, but I know some people do like it, right? No ends in the boat kind of thing.
I used to like it because it was shorter, but in the end, you know, you set the kite the first, you know, before the first start, and if your sheets are outside, it's a nightmare to try to fix. It's just as easy to have the tails in the boat and be able to undo one tail and just pull it right out and refeed it, and you're good the rest of the day. So yeah, I'm not continuous sheets.
Could we watch a jibe again? I was struggling with how the third person's weight shift is driving the jibe.
Sure.
Because as you go downwind, if he goes too early, it actually will make you go upwind, right?
No.
So
no. If the boat heels the weather, you're going to turn down.
oh, I'm with you. I see it now.
Yep.
I got you. I got you. Yes. Got you. So he was in the middle to leeward downwind. Got you. Okay, I'm with you now.
So
So the same thing, as it gets windier, that third person's not going to be necessarily on the low side or the middle of the boat. They're going to be on the high side probably when it's going to be blowing 7 to 10. And so all they need to do then is not so much, you're not going to essentially cross sides in the boat, but simply stay there longer, right? Park on that side so that when the boat becomes neutral and less weighted, then that influence of having 3 crew on that weather side will then flip the boat.
Yes, got it.
Steve, one thing I'm going to just mention is each of these guys is
close to or over 6 feet tall. The forward guy is about 6'2". So,
Yeah, true.
yeah.
Which, and that's the point. Oftentimes we sail with 2 people, especially on the lakes. But when you go to a regatta, you want the extra hands, you want the extra eyes. It's not bad to sail with 3 people, and this is the influence that you can have and the benefit that it gives you. So, go ahead and pick somebody that, you may not have thought about before, because if they're a good sailor and they're bigger, so what? The weight is a little bit of a downside, but if you use the weight and you use it properly, it'll be for your benefit.
So one of the things that you guys tend to do is, because you're so used to sailing 2 up, you'll put a smaller person for that third often. Not always, but often.
For Tim,
you're
we try to find, the smallest.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm thinking cadence. Yeah, right. So,
Yeah, right.
yeah.
Any other questions, you guys?
Hey, Steve, so on the motorboat wake, and let's say you're out on San Francisco Bay and one of those ferries goes by and it's more like a rip curl.
Yeah.
Like, what's your strategy there? Or do you bear off, try to get parallel to that thing, or what's the best
Hang on and pray. I mean, you have to try to, depending on, where you're going, you want to try to soften the blow as much as possible, right? We don't want these boats to, chatter our teeth.
yeah.
If you can change course enough to make that better, yeah. Otherwise, if you're, quote unquote ripping, then just go ahead and use it actually to blast off and separate the water off the boat, right? It's look at like fountain power boats. What did they do? Reggie put little ventilating stripes in the side of the boat, and what that did is that allowed the water to then get air in it, which we don't try to do, but when they have the thrust, they can do that, and then cause the water to reattach, separate. Well, when it's windy like that, and if you're blasting off, you now have the thrust, right, to do what you want. So you can go ahead and get away with some ventilation like that. And so use it to the benefit. You look at the skiffs and stuff, what do? They just, just blast right off on it and kind of, try to catch air, right?
Yeah.
It's like a bunny hop. Yeah. Just don't break anything, right?
So
Yeah.
so Gordon asked a question in the chat about inside or outside jibes. Inside always on this boat.
Yeah.
There's no reason to do an outside jibe. You're only going to cause problems for yourself.
Yeah. The pole
Is that because of the distance between the forestay and the tack of the ASIM? Basically, you got like 3 feet or 4 feet, whatever it is. You got plenty of room to do inside versus going all the way around the outside. Is that the theory?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, it's actually 6 feet. It's a long way.
Is it 6 feet? Wow. Okay.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, there's no reason to have to jibe outside. It's just that much more rope for people to trip over.
So a slower jibe, essentially.
It would take forever. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I don't think we did any videos of douses, did we?
We did not know.
But I'll just say like a couple bullet points about douses to think about. My preference is to start from the outside of the boat in. So release the pole, release the tack line, release the halyard. Okay. When either one of us is crew, our rule is as soon as the crew has the sail in their hand, we basically let go of the lines. And we don't keep a hand on it. We don't control it on the way down. The crew just gets it in. It's gone in the water, probably a couple of times in the, 5 years or 6 years or whatever we've been sailing together, but it almost always comes in the boat.
Does your halyard ever recleat itself?
Not
if you
really.
let go of the halyard, like sometimes it goes back into the cleat and then the guy's trying to pull the sail down. Or does that
No.
just mean the springs in the cleat are so weak that it allows the jaws to open too easily and we just need a new cleat?
John, that's generally with what you would call a foot cleat, when someone's stepping on the halyard,
right,
and it just gets a little tight and it just will go into the cleat. So
We
You
flip
don't
it.
think
best
cleats
is-
can get weak and just open too easily?
No,
No,
even
just
if
make
it's
sure
strong,
your feet are clean.
it's just just go sort of work your feet down to fiberglass so there's no rope underneath.
Yeah, so let's also talk about we have bags, spinnaker bags that are in the companionway, and we always have the third person. They take the tail of the spinnaker halyard when the spinnaker's up, and they feed it into that bag. So there's not going to be a foot cleat, generally speaking, when we're dowsing.
And you flake from the tail to the cleat, as opposed to the cleat to the tail. So that way the tail is always in the bottom. And that little bit where it turns the corner, it's that 80-degree turn or whatever it is to the cleat, provides just enough friction. If you have an extreme fair lead on the cleat, which is the stainless hoop, basically, there's enough friction right there as it goes out that it helps monitor the rate in which the halyard's coming down in all but very windy conditions.
So, quick question. When you grab the clue of the sail, do you ever blow the tack and the pole at the same time?
The pole's always first because that's automatic tack line.
Yeah, but do you grab both and just blow them at the same time once you got the sail in the hand?
I don't, but
okay. I
That's
just wondered.
to Tim's
I think-
point. He goes outside in, right? So he goes pole, tack, halyard, and they're all pretty close, right? Whereas I always go pole, and then I'll go halyard, just knowing that when I release a tack, it's literally, the last handful. It's 3-5 feet, something like that. And so by then I feel better about having more of the upper part of the sail kind of in my hands. But it's 6 to 1, half a dozen of the other, and they're all really close anyways.
Well,
the key-
actually,
Sorry, Tree.
you want that pole to come in, because if you're in close quarters, you want that pole out of the freaking way at the rounding. So that's why I always get my crew to try to not release the tack line immediately. So,
And it's very important that pole comes in. We sail on a couple boats that not all of them, when you release, will they come back on their own, and you actually have to pull the tack line back. I know Tim's boat's getting a little bit like that, so we need to address it and work on it a little bit. But when they come back on their own, it's by far way better.
Yeah, perfect.
Steve, one thing we found, and I guess it was maybe Midwinters or CKOD, when we were on a tight reach coming into the mark and we were trying to blow everything to get the chute down, unless we did ease the tack, we couldn't get the pole to come back. There was too much load on it.
Yep.
So it ended up being, okay, do the pole, nothing's happening, let the tack go, and then we were able to pull it around.
Or sometimes it's let the pole go, jiggle to, just like kind of just a little bit on that tack line, you have it in your hand for a second and let the pole move. But honestly, whoever's taking down the kite should never know which line is moving through blocks.
I always know.
But that's the ideal, right? Is that as that pole comes in, you're gathering the foot, and once the foot is close, then once the pole line stops moving, then release the tack line. But the person pulling the sail in shouldn't be able to tell the difference.
And I'm just going to add one more thing about the douse here. And I see people all the time doing it, and it makes me cringe. But one thing I started doing, and you really have to do it. It's the only way to do it, is to pull the spinnaker when you're pulling it down along the port side there. Pull it through the block, right? Don't stand there like I used to always do on the Melges 24. I'd stand up and I'd hand over hand it because that's just the way I did it, right? But there is a better way on this boat, since it's coming behind the shroud, is just to overhaul the sheet through the block as if you were jibing, right? Because that's when you have the most strength, and it's always going to be in the same spot where that rope's coming out of. You don't ever have to fish and try to find it, or if it skies or falls or whatever, just overhaul it through the block until the clue is in your hand, and it makes it so much easier. And I'll pull, As soon as I grab that clue patch, I just start windmilling, and it's just
So,
it's a
Steve,
huge difference.
Steve, along those lines, I keep trying to get someone to do it. So if you do pull there, you have a lower pull. So the pole, if you let the pole go, it's going to have a better chance of releasing. If you're pulling from standing up, you're pulling up on it, and it's less likely to come back. So
Absolutely.
that would help.
Good
Yeah, it
point.
makes a big difference for sure. You have to pull through the block. If you
I've
take
been
one,
telling and I've been getting resistance.
yeah.
I do it half the time.
I have a slightly
Yeah.
different perspective in that when I'm taking my chute down, first thing I do is blow the pole, the outhaul, and then I'll use the tack line to pull the pole all the way back. By this time, I've already got the jib unfurled, and by pulling that pole back, it brings the spinnaker back behind the jib and thus depowers the spinnaker because it's hidden behind the jib. And then it's real easy for the crew to gather the foot of the sail. Once they've got the foot of the sail, then I'll release the halyard and drop the sail right into the turtle. So this has the benefit of instead of trying to use the foot of the sail to pull the pole back, when you've got medium to heavy air, you're actually stretching that spinnaker cloth as you're trying to use the cloth to pull the pole back. I'd much rather use the tack line to pull the pole back, depower the spinnaker, and then it makes it real easy to douse.
That only works when you're on port, though. If you're doing a lure douse, then it won't. You have to, I don't know, be kind of, or excuse me, if you're doing a windward, if you're on port and you're doing a windward one, then it doesn't matter that the jib is out, right? Just gonna have to pull it back.
Yeah, and quick, Phil Davis is a new owner, and Phil, the answer to your question, yeah, typically you will see the spinnakers flying off of the pole a fair amount, foot to 18 inches versus down on the block. So you don't need to retract the pole, and unlike your Melgas, that's normal. So.
Yep. Any other questions, you guys? I think we answered this, most of them in the chat there, but
yeah.
Anything else ring out, you guys?
Sweet. Good session. Thanks, Steve and Tim. Thanks for putting together the videos. Really nice.
Sorry it was so simple and kind of.
Oh, it's good.
Great, but.
good discussion, good information, and we'll try to post the recording of this, and then we can probably put those videos up on the forum as well.
Yeah, they'll be much cleaner there. Yeah.
Okay. And then just a quick class announcement for those of you. We're getting ready we've got one more review at the board, a couple of rule changes coming out. So watch for that ballot and vote if you can. We need to have a strong turnout on the ballots to get those rule changes done. And keep posting those regattas out on the class forum. So everybody knows what's out there. Phil's always looking for a regatta. I see him posting all the time. So that's good, a good source of information for that. And then a reminder that we're going to have the Pacific Coast Championship in September at Richmond Yacht Club. And then, of course, don't miss it. The 30th anniversary of the North American Championship is coming in November at Lake Norman, which should be just awesome. So if you're anywhere in the vicinity of Lake Norman, you should be there. And we're looking forward to that this year. So I don't think we'll have any more webinars this year. So I want to wish everybody a great sailing season, and let the board know if there's anything we can do to help you guys, and get out there and sail and race and have a good time.
Yeah, Travis, can I add one thing on the North
Yeah.
Americans? Anybody that wants free boat storage over the winter, you can bring your boat to Lake Norman in November and winter it there, and then sail with us in January and again in March. We have a January 1 regatta, and we have our midwinters in March. and then you can take it home. So think about that. If you're worried about the long drive in both directions, you can save yourself a drive with the boat in 2 directions.
And any of you guys, by the way, if anybody in Lake Norman is thinking they won't have crew or want to charter a boat, let Emily know. We'll definitely find homes for your boat to race. We'd love to get 30 plus boats on the line for this regatta.
Yep.
So
Yep.
That would be fantastic.
yeah. Okay, great. Thanks, Steve. Thanks, Tim. Really appreciate it. Thanks, everybody. Have a great evening.
Thanks to you and Emily for setting this up.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.